I like my unique technique for getting a thumbnail for these. My laptop screen. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. Works for me. All right, so this is Mary and the Witch's Flower, creative prompts inspired by. So what I gotta say, like the world building potential in this alone, like if the author or the publisher opened up the world for people to play in, that alone would be a great thing for me. But I did come up with my usual 6 additional ideas for what we could do for ideas inspired by this movie, for original things that we can create. So 6. At one point in the story, the character talks about how she's in a magical science lab where they do experiments and they talk about chemistry, and she says she understands chemistry and she's really good at science at school. And so I got to thinking, like, that would be kind of fun to do if you somehow created a world where either magic was recently rediscovered or somehow the doorway between 2 worlds, one that uses magic and one that uses our kind of society, opened enough that you could send exchange students from one side to the other. And so you have this science exchange student school of magic, and their chemistry and physics knowledge seems weird and unusual to them, just as what they can do with magic would seem weird and unusual to us. I think it would be fun to write a story of a science kid showing off science fair projects as if they are sort of like a different type of magic, because the people in the magic realm are so used to just using magic, they have no idea how that worked. So like a steam engine, like the old model steam engine that they made in Greece as an example of something that can be done, being able to reproduce that, they'd be aghast and marvel at the amazing abilities of this spinning ball of metal. It's not using any magic to move it. How are they doing that? Anyway, so that's the first one that comes to. Number 5. Yeah, I'm counting downwards this time. There's a point in the story where she goes to the gates of the school and there's a big sign with like runes on it, and it says that trespassers will be transformed. And I feel like there's a story potentially in the idea of a character like Mary who is sort of not really a wizard to go to that school, and so she's a trespasser technically. But if they pass through those gates and are transformed, say, into a magical being of some form, like a giant fairy or something like that, where they now are way more magical than anybody else at the school, but they just want to turn back into themselves. And so they're studying at the school to master the magic that'll allow them to reverse the change. I think that would be a fun and interesting story. All right, let's go with number 4. Yep. I'm kind of feeling early on when I was watching this, there sort of the idea at some point that there was some kind of attack on the school was something we saw in the very beginning. And then Mary shows up to the school and the whole of everything looks like it's nothing special has ever happened. There's never been an attack. And, the warnings that, the people there might be up to something and don't trust them kind of feeling that you're supposed to get, that the people at the school may not all be good people. the thing I feel like is, are we looking at a situation in which there's a sort of panic? The people who are in charge of the school, the students, all of them maybe have lost their connection to magic and are just tapping into magical things made by previous generations. And they know there's only a limited shelf life for how far we can push that. And then this girl shows up who they want to try to use whatever thing she's tapping into for her power. But it feels like everything they manage to take away or hide or snatch from her and use only has minute charges. So where is she getting all of her charges? And they suspect that she has found a renewable, regrowing source of magic. But in the end, it's revealed that she is the source or the key to unlocking the magic in all of them again. And that's sort of like, there are a couple ways you can play that story. And I sort of thought maybe that's where some of it was going. Like, it seemed like the professors were desperate to connect with the magic. But, I mean, they run a school of magic with multiple disciplines within it. Like, they have a lot of magic. Like, I don't know what they're looking for that they don't currently have. Anyway, number 3 was the school's pride and joy of what they can do is their specialty in transformations. And one of the first things that I noticed was, like, you don't see a lot of it, but like there's a character that shows up named Flanagan, and he's the broom tender. He's not human. He's an anthropomorphic animal. And then when she's getting a tour of the school, the ones that are working in the kitchen are also anthropomorphic animals. And I got to wondering, like, are these the transformations that the school makes? And is this sort of like a slave caste, a owned people, a hobby, the house elf, or Tabby, or whatever it is from the Harry Potter series? So I got the feeling, like, is there a story there to be told of, like, this is what they're doing with transformation magic, and these are the beings that are transformed from simple animals into a servile class of animal beings? And is there a civil rights movement for them? Is there, if something happens to one of them, who's the one that they can go to solve the problem? Because if they're an owned class, there's somebody else's property as far as they're concerned. But, if they need a private detective or something like that, who's the private detective they go to? So that's a story element I was kind of curious to see more of, and why it was the way it was. Is there more story there? All right, and number 2 is the school in general. They had the section where they were doing the broom riding. They had a section where they were working on one type of magic. They talk about different types of magic. And one of the ones they talk about was they were talking about sciences, like chemistry specifically. But you saw, like, steam-powered devices and cybernetic implants, which I thought was really interesting interpretation of what would be happening at a school of magic. And the headmistress did say at one point that in this school of magic, you see the elevators going up and down, and Mary's like, oh, how do the elevators work? And the headmistress is like, electricity. Electricity is a form of magic. And I'm like, that's an interesting take on that. And that opens up the world for, if you've ever looked into some of the newer Dungeons and Dragons stuff, there's a class of character called the Artificer. And the Artificer is one who constructs essentially mad science gadgets, things that physics say shouldn't be possible, but they construct these magical science devices. And I want to see that. I also kind of want to see a school of alchemy. And like, we don't see that a lot. We see a lot of hocus pocus magic or mad science sometimes, but we don't really see like magical sciences. And I'd be there for that. I would get into seeing how well we could do that kind of story. And then number 1, we have at one point she's fleeing the school of magic after confrontation, and the broom crashes on a beach by a beach house, which again was really gorgeous artwork. She goes to this house, and little fire elements pop up to light the way to the house. Goes inside the house, sees the little herbs growing in pots alongside this very magical looking cottage, and the interior is gorgeous, and finds magic books and whatnot all over the inside of it. So at this point, she's been in her great aunt's house in our world, essentially, the mystical forest, where you have sort of like a Shinto, not really a Shinto shrine as far as we can see. There was a bridge with some stone lanterns on it. So there's sort of like the mystical realm of the forest there, and then the magic school, and then that magical beach house cottage with all the magical theme stuff, and wherever the beings like Flanagan come from. And I feel like you have the ability to do a Odyssey or a Gulliver's Travels or something like that through all these little places in the magical realms that they pass through, and see what's different in each one. And, you know, a utopian or a dystopian, or a mystical versus mad sciencey realm. And it's just like, I feel like it would be kind of fun to do a full magical realms journey adventure for a character. So I do think there's a lot of the world, like, maybe that was the intent of the author or the anime makers. I don't know. Like, we'll never get more than what we've got already. And what we got is a giant tease. And I want more from a world that was just hinted at and looks gorgeous and complicated and interesting. Why don't we have more? I want more than that. So I guess we'll have to make it ourselves. So those are the creative ideas that came up inspired by this movie. Hope you enjoy. Maybe you could create something. If you do, let me know. I will see you for the next episode, technically today, I guess, at this point. So take care. I'll see you later. Okay, this time I'm going to end on time.